What do you mean?
That you're willing to give a rebate, but only for the first one. And just telling this story to everybody.
I wouldn't tell it to everybody.
Yeah.
I would strategically pick, right? Because you're not going to have the resource to go after everybody to start with anyway, right? You're going to.
Yeah,
of course. Obviously I would strategically pick, and then I would see who's motivated, right? Because you may get someone who's motivated to do it, and not have to give them a rebate.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, I'd be a little cagey, right?
Yeah.
I'd be ready to give the rebate, but that doesn't mean I'm going to bring it up in the first discussion, because in the first discussion, it's going to be with the engineers for the most part. You're probably not going to get into pricing.
Yes.
So pricing is going to be second, third. After validation, they'll probably get serious about pricing. But don't expect a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is, from their perspective, a big chunk of their cost is related to the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think might be a reasonable price for such a license for 3D face unlock module? Only for the software part.
I would say you're probably looking at in volume, single-digit pennies for the software.
Mm-hmm.
Likely. I mean, you could try to get a nice NRE fee or upfront fee or something like that, but they're going to negotiate you down. And it might not start there, but it's going to wind up there.
So the first generation will be a lot more, and then the second generation, the second hardware generation is only pennies?
Well, the hardware isn't going to change much.
Okay.
Unless you've got ways to get cost out of the hardware. The pixel size is the pixel size for the sensor, and so if you're talking about their VGA global shutter sensor, it's a set size. They've taken all the cost out of that, so they're selling that at pretty much the lowest margins they can. They'll sell that at the lowest margins they can get away with for the OEMs. The OEMs know their costs. The same with the light sources. So I'm just talking about for the software. For the software, you might be able to get some upfront fee and then an ongoing, and that ongoing may start in the 10 to in the 10 to 20 cent range, but they'll come back continuously to continue to knock that down. When I was at Samsung, we were licensing EDOF technology. I came on board, and the EDOF technology was $1 a chip. Over the next 18 months, I got that down to 7 cents a chip. It was like almost every 6 weeks I had to call them back and say, and that was part of it was it wasn't selling as well as we had hoped. But that's pretty much the modus operandi for Asian companies.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you set a contract doesn't mean they're not going to come back and say,
"Yep,
we need to renegotiate this."
From your experience, do you see any way to avoid this or even delay that?
Delay the price reduction?
Yes. So what are strategies?
If you go from a small player to the number one supplier, then you have power. But if you're half a dozen guys somewhere in Europe, you don't have a lot of power against 100,000 people in Korea.
So how would you do all that if that was, your project? How would you approach?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Make a deal.
I'm saying I would budget for it that way, right? So, but you're talking about